Welcome to Pearls of Pedagogy. Are you ready to be inspired by a story of passion, resilience, and educational innovation? Well, today we have the pleasure of speaking with Precious Morgan Hallman, an exceptional educator who has transformed classrooms and communities from Alabama to Washington, D.C. From her roots in small southern town to becoming a reading specialist, curriculum developer, and self-published author, Precious has dedicated her life to empowering students and parents alike. Imagine the impact of creating a supportive learning environment at home during a pandemic. How does she do it? What drives her relentless pursuit of excellence in education? Join us as we uncover the secrets of her success and learn how to turn challenges into opportunities for growth. This is an episode you don't want to miss. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm here with Precious Hallman, educator and author. Thank you so much, Precious, for joining me today. Thank
You're
you so
so
much.
welcome. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So I just want to, get right into it. I have a little icebreaker question.
Okay.
What is a guilty pleasure TV show that you're watching right now?
Hmm. I think maybe Shogun
Shogun. Ooh, okay. So me and my
is so
husband,
good.
we just finished that. Yes, it is really good, well written. What episode are y'all on now? Are you
I
on?
actually finished it. So
You did.
I've watched all of them.
It was that last episode. I was like, when they finally revealed everything, I
Yes.
said, "Ooh, that was just superb writing."
It
I,
was
I mean,
so good.
I just and I mean, if y'all have not seen Shogun, this is not like me, sponsor. They're not a sponsor, but if you have not seen it, it's a really good show. It's
Absolutely.
not kid friendly, but you need to. You
Not at all.
definitely. It was fun for me. And both my husband and I liked it. It had enough drama and
Hmm.
action, so it's good, for couples. It was our little date night show when the kids went to sleep. So
Yes, it's a great one for that. Absolutely.
right. Oh, that was so good. That was a show that I had just finished watching too. So cool beans. All right, so I want to open up with you talking about your inspiration for going into education.
Okay. Well, I was actually originally a biology major. And so, with my schedule, playing basketball and all of that, it didn't really mesh with that. And so, I was like, okay, what else would I like to do? What do I see myself doing for my career? Something that I'm waking up happy and excited to do. And education came to mind because I think I come from a lineage of teachers because
Mhm.
my father was a teacher and moved up through the ranks, and I have three great aunts who also did the same thing.
Mhm.
But also, when I thought about it, I had been teaching my entire life, even growing up, teaching Sunday
Mhm.
school, being a Sunday school secretary, um, teaching vacation Bible school,
Mhm.
being asked to come and speak. It was like a natural thing for me. And I always love children,
Mhm.
everybody's children. I found
Yeah.
myself babysitting a lot,
Mhm.
found myself playing with the kids, even in the store. I would be playing with kids. My mom, like, do you know those kids? I'm like, no, but they're so cute.
Mhm.
And so then I began to think about like my purpose. And I was like, I think God is calling me to a greater purpose
Mm.
to help educate and mentor young kids and students for generations to come. And so that's how I came into education.
Awesome. So you had that love for children pretty much from the beginning. So
Right.
now I'm going to back up to this biology major thing because last week I got to interview a Dr. Norman Golar, who's
Hmm.
currently a professor at Stillman College, is both of our alma maters. And
Right.
he said he originally was going into biology because he wanted to be a doctor, and that's just from um, young Black people, students, we want to usually try to find something that's going to be
Hmm.
lucrative for our
Right.
families. So
Hmm.
is that kind of the background for the biology major portion for you?
I think that was a portion of it. I also grew up riding horses and um, competing in rodeos and riding in parades and various things like that. So I always loved animals. I would play with,
Mhm.
the smallest animal. I was always catching a lizard or a frog
Mhm.
or something, sitting on my porch watching hummingbirds visit my mother's sunflowers. And
Mhm.
so animals just captivated me. And so I was like, I need to go into something that would possibly lead me into working with animals,
Mm.
maybe traveling throughout working with animals, because I watch a lot of National Geographic and love those shows where they just travel, sit up their cameras, and then capture these amazing things that's going on with animals. And so I thought that perhaps that I would do something like that.
Mhm.
But God obviously had another plan.
Yes, that is so interesting to me. I have a niece that loves animals, so we'll see where that takes her because she is like hardcore wanting to go to Tuskegee and everything. So I'm excited about that. I'm like, ooh, another vet in the family. That would be interesting.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. So, okay, let's talk about your upbringing in Utah, Alabama,
Okay.
and kind of talk about Utah for those of us that are not from. And I'm not. And when I say us, I don't include myself because I'm from Alabama too, and I grew up
Hmm.
on well water and no cable, and I thought that was everybody had that. I grew up in the country too. So let's talk about Utah and how you growing up there in Utah, Alabama, helped shape your views on education.
Well, as you stated, Utah is a very small town. As I tell people, it's four traffic lights. It's still like that to this day. But I think growing up in a small community, um, everybody's connected, right? And you get this sense of community from the beginning where people just bring you on in. They just love you. They don't necessarily ask you, can they do something? They just do it for you.
Mhm.
And you have everyone is like your parents, right? Because everybody knows each other, and so you can't go anywhere without someone knowing who child you are. That
Yeah.
you always have eyes on you. But it's a great thing because I tell people all the time, I was sheltered, but I had an amazing childhood. I felt the
Mhm.
love. Everyone just took me in. I was welcomed everywhere. Um, and that I always was protected, right? And shielded from danger. And so I really loved that. And I also loved how everyone helped everyone, right? If someone
Yeah.
was struggling, someone was just going to help, right? They didn't have to
Mhm.
ask. They could see it and they were going to just pick up the pieces and give them what they needed. And so I really appreciated that. But also, I had amazing teachers. And when you think about small towns, people
Mhm.
don't think that you have such wonderful educators in this little place. Like, why would they teach there? And I had the
Mhm.
most amazing teachers. And so all of that helped me, as well as I had people in my church, in my community, some that may not even had a college degree, but they were so versed, and had so much knowledge, right, and wisdom to
Mhm.
pass down and share with me, even when I didn't want to hear it. And
Right.
so I think those are some of the great things about growing up in a small town. You
Mhm.
get that from the gist. Everybody's paying attention. You're not ignored, right? Everyone
Right.
sees you. And so that in itself helped me, as I left home and went to pursue my dreams.
Wow, yes, and what you said about growing up in a small town and how it shapes your views on education, that's really where especially looking back as an
Hmm.
educator now, I see how much value there is in teaching where you live, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Because I grew up, even when we moved from what we call the country, we moved into the city part of Tuscaloosa, which is still
Mhm. Right.
country enough. um, I still had so many teachers that knew my family, knew
Mhm.
went to school with my family. They're like, "Oh, I know who. Oh, what's your last?" Like as soon as they hear
Right.
your last name, they like, "Oh, who your
Mhm.
folks is?" That's what my grandma would. Who your folks
Mhm.
is? And oh, well, my mom is it. And it's like I still remember. Oh, my dad. He grew up on 19th Street. Mom,
Mhm.
Brown Circle. Oh, they Mason Bonner. Like all the like I have you. These names ring a bell because it's like boom, 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 and you could not mess up because everybody
Mm-mm.
was watching you. Everybody held you to
Right.
a high standard.
Yes.
Um, and so it's kind of like hard because I'm teaching right now.
Mhm.
I'm teaching students that live really around me in my neighborhood, and I value that a lot. Even though I didn't grow up here, it's still important because it's just little things that I know about kind of
Mhm.
how the different subdivisions in this area that are all feeding into our district. I kind of know how some kids look at other kids. If you're from this,
Mhm.
if you're from this side of the creek versus that side of the creek, or
Mhm.
like I kind of know, so you can have your ears open to certain things, especially when dealing
Right.
with management. And kind of hearing like, hold on now, yeah, we're not saying that, we're not, we're all family up in here. So I think that's real valuable. You understand the kids, like, okay, if we have issues, oh, y'all know everybody takes this same road because I still live in a very rural part of North Dallas and
Okay.
of the Metroplex. And so we have rocky, I'm not gonna call them dirt roads, but they're like rock roads.
Okay.
So it is so I understand, we have to go across creeks. And if it rains too much, we're just in the house because it's
Right.
really no other way to get out.
Mhm.
So I just think that's very valuable. And a lot of times that's what's missing in the connection
Yeah.
piece with education now. Because we have a lot of, and I don't even want to make it sound like I'm blaming teachers, but the teachers
Mhm.
just kind of go in and leave and drive in an hour, 2 hours to their home, and
Mhm.
not really truly understanding the students and the neighborhood where they're from. Because a lot of times I believe that can really help in the management and help with understanding the students. But of
Mhm.
course, that's not feasible for everyone.
That's true.
So it's kind of like, oh, I wish, it's a larger system at play, of course, in my
Right.
in my belief. But
It
um,
is.
yeah, but I do miss that. I miss, and every time I have like one of my former teachers, I hear about them maybe passing away or being sick. I'm just
Mhm.
like, where are they? Who's helping them? Who's taking care of them?
Right.
Because they didn't play. I remember the smallest lesson. So I
Mhm.
really treasure being from a small town and having that type of upbringing.
Yeah, I do as well.
hmm Yeah. So, okay. So let's talk about a pivotal moment for you when you were in like in grade school, K through 12,
Mhm.
that may have influenced how you teach now, whether it was another educator, kind of like even your teaching style. Can you kind of talk about that? Maybe those key educators that influenced you in your style?
Yeah, I think pretty much when I was in high school, so and you may relate to this as being from a small town, we had to choose going before we went into ninth grade, we had to choose whether we were going to do like a standard track or advanced AP track, right?
Yeah.
And so of course my dad at the time, I think he was maybe teaching high school history, but moving to the school counselor. And so he was like, of course you're taking AP. So I really didn't have a choice. And so I was in AP classes and I saw it was going well. And because he really wanted to push me, even though I always loved school and my MO was making those A's and B's, that was my
Right.
thing. I had a teacher named Mr. Square. Mr. Square has moved up through the ranks. He's been a
Really?
principal, board member, and so his class was so hard. So at the time he was new to the building, so we really didn't. We were getting to know him as well, and I was like, oh my God, if this is how college is going to be. I may be in trouble. I just thought that he was so hard and he was so hard on us. And so I went to my dad's office one day and I said, I want to withdraw from Mr. Square Classroom. I cannot do it anymore. He's too hard on us. His work is too hard. He is just asking for too much of us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even though this is advanced placement class, this is too
Mm-hmm.
much. And so my dad was like, what? You can't do that. Where would you go? Because all of your classes are
Mm-hmm.
AP classes. So you can't switch over to standard track. And then
Right.
here comes Mr. Square. He's like, Miss Morgan, I am not going to let you withdraw this class because if you do, you will go to college and you would think that if the class is too hard or the professor is too hard, you can just drop that class. And he
Mm-hmm.
was like, you're not going to do it. And I was like, okay, but if I really want to, my dad can put me after class. He makes the schedules.
Yes, right.
Okay. But I was so glad that I stayed in there because then I was like, okay, so my teachers, they're really invested in me, right? They're
Mm-hmm.
invested in us. And so um I was like, they really want the best for us. You
Mm-hmm.
know, they treated us teachers. I don't know if it was a small town thing or it was just that time where teachers they were invested in you like you were their own children. And they pushed us.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like they gave us the right supports, right? They knew when you needed tutoring versus when you needed enrichment versus if you needed all of those plus encouragement. And so they really also, for me, they cultivated that spirit of leadership, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they force you to do these things. They put you on a program when they didn't ask your permission. They
Right.
like, okay, we
Voluntold.
having a program, right? They volunteer. You're on program and you are doing the welcome. You're like, okay, you're doing the pledge in front of the entire school. So they
Yes.
did that in class as well. Program participation. They made us do presentations. You had this
Mm-hmm.
poetry. You had to learn the poetry. You couldn't read it, right? So that was public speaking. They assigned us to groups. They didn't ask you, well, who would you like to work with? No, they just tell you working with these people right here. They could be the people
Right.
that you may have just gotten to arguing with, but you are working with them today. And so I think those were like pivotal moments for me growing up in a small town and you know also learning to love education but appreciate what those teachers did for me.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Oh, those pivotal teachers is so interesting because I grew up around in a family of teachers like you did.
Mhm.
And when I first got to Stillman, I avoided teaching with the plague.
Mhm.
I was like, it's too many teachers in our family. Everybody does this. I can do something different. I'm
Mhm.
multi-talented, all that kind of stuff. And so, of course, life happens.
Mhm.
And every job that I had, I ended up being in some type of training role.
Mhm.
And people were always like, "Oh, you explain things so like I can understand what you're talking about." And I said,
Mhm.
"Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, I appreciate that." And then, of course, lo and behold, I get to the point where wow, I'm accidentally taking some education classes at Stillman and love it. I was like, whoa, it was just like something kind of like turned
Mhm.
inside of me.
Right.
And I said, okay, well, what could I do different in education? Because I still had that feeling of, man, everybody does this in my family. Like I have all these people, they educators and people know my great uncle, Dean Amos Hubbard. But like I
Mhm.
had people like that and his wife, my great auntie, and I came from this lineage of these amazing people that went through segregation, integration, and all that.
Mhm.
Um, so I ran from it and I had a couple teachers, but my the first one that I br- that comes to mind is Miss Ball, who was my 8th grade ELA teacher.
Mhm.
Um oh, I had a talking problem all through
Mhm.
elementary
I did
school.
too. I did too.
Got in trouble. It was always in those that was back when the report cards had
Mhm.
that paper report card and it had I made A's, I made B's, but when
Mhm.
conduct that grade, D needs improvement.
Right. I had a sad face in elementary school.
It was
All these A's, sad face.
oh, and I said, man, it would just be like, man, and my dad and my mom like, if you can't do anything else, you can sit down and shut up. That I remember my dad saying that to me. He was like, if you can't do nothing else at that school, you can be quiet. And I'm like, I'm trying to be quiet. I was just doing this. I was trying to help. It's always something, some kind of excuse to try to get out of the trouble I was getting into. And I made it through like to 8th grade without dying or being killed by my parents because I was always in and out of trouble, like just for talking, being disruptive. And get to Miss Ball's class, and I'm, got my home girl sitting right next to me, and I'm sitting there like, yeah, Miss Ball moves me. She moves me again. She moves me 3 times in her class, and I'm everybody's friend. I'm like, hey, I'm trying. And she pulled me to the side one day, and she looked at me and she said, "You're not gonna get anywhere being pretty and stupid." And I was like,
Whoa.
what? And she said, "You are beautiful, but you keep cutting up like this, nobody's gonna let you go anywhere." And I was like, and she said, "You are too smart for this." And she said, "This is disruptive behavior." And and I had never had a teacher call it disrespect.
Right.
Me being disruptive and me talking too much. She said, "You're and that was something my parents were like, you don't disrespect your elders, And so
Right.
when she said that to me, she said, "You are being disrespectful." And I was just like, the part that hurt me was the fact that I disappointed her.
Right.
And that she said that I was being disrespectful, and I never meant to be disrespectful. And that was something that I felt like, I know my parents don't play that.
Right.
And so that no nonsense that she put in me, like from that point on, I was still talkative, but I knew how to turn it off after that point.
Right.
That it was that one, and I will never forget. That was 1997, 98. She told me that, and I will never forget those words. She probably don't even remember now, but she told me that. She said, "You're not gonna you're too smart for this. You're being disrespectful." And I said, oh. And that's a lot of my style. My students, I'm tough, and at first because I feel like I'm still developing my style, but
Right.
I feel pretty confident when I'm talking to students. I'm saying, "Hey, you need to do this. This is what I expect. These are non-negotiables for me." I do that from day one. And at first it's kind of nerve-wracking because I don't know what kind of response I'm going to get back, with parents
Right.
being a little different nowadays. You don't know how but I think I've had one like negative feedback from a parent, and it really wasn't me, honestly. But
Right.
that was the only like kind of uncomfortable conversation I've had to have about how I handled discipline
Right.
with your child. But other than that, parents are like, "I'm so glad you're tough. I'm so glad." And the students would tell me, "Oh yeah, you're mean, but we know you are nice too." And I had a kid tell me that because they wrote down, "You're our favorite teacher." They were crying at the end of the year. I'm like, "Why y'all crying? You're our favorite teacher." I said, "I'm y'all's favorite teacher. It's not such and such that gives y'all candy every other day."
Right.
No, no, you're strict, but it's like a good strict. I had one kid tell me that. I said, "Okay." And that affirmation helped me, but I took it from Miss Ball, Eastwood Middle School. I
Yeah.
don't play. I will tell, like, "Look, you are smart, but you sure aren't acting like it." That
And
I will.
it's those ELA teachers who get you together. I remember
Yes,
all of mine. I love them. They, I helped them. They were up here. So if any one of them said anything that I was doing wrong, I was instantly like sad because I
wrong.
disappointed them. Those ELA teachers, they do not play. They love you, but they will tell you like it is. And I had some of the best ones. So
Yes,
yep, that it's the ELA teachers. You do
yes.
not want to disappoint them.
You do not. I think it's because they have that vocabulary. Like they can read you like a little kindergarten book.
Right.
It will
And you like,
reach
what did she say?
cut you all kinds of ways with their words. Like so okay, that was awesome. Okay, so I want to kind of go into some like talk about your professional growth and the different
Okay.
roles you've had. So you've had various roles in education. I want you to talk about how each role contributed, especially when you went like you've gone from, being in the classroom to being like a team lead and facilitator. Can you kind of talk about some things you've learned as you grew into each of those positions?
Yes, I think as a teacher, it helped me develop like my teaching style. What
Mhm,
type of teacher do I want to be? I didn't want to be a teacher that's yelling at the kids, right? All
mhm.
day, every day. I'm leaving with a headache. They didn't get anything out of what I said because I'm yelling, right?
Right.
So I had to develop my teaching style. I like a noisy classroom, but I wanted like good noise, right?
Yes.
They're learning, right?
Productive
People was right,
noise.
productive noise, right? We're not just making noise. So it teaching help with that also gave me like expertise in child development,
Mhm,
different disabilities and different um, learning. Um, I would say maybe like the way that students learn, right?
mhm,
I learned the different types of learning. You have your visual learners,
mhm,
but you have your kinesthetic learners. So it taught me a lot about that. And then also the power of building relationships.
mhm,
I never wanted to go and talk to the teacher before the teacher they had the year before and let them fill my ear with all of these things that the kid could not do,
mm,
or what they, that they were bad and you're going to have trouble out them and their mom is this. I never wanted to hear those comments. I wanted to give them a fresh start. And
mhm,
so I learned how to do that. And then as we switched and went into like data analysis and being data driven, I learned a lot of that as a teacher as well. And
mhm,
then when I made it over to being like a district facilitator, that helped me transition into providing professional development for teachers, right? So it's a switch when you're teaching children and then you're teaching adults. You have to really change up the way you do things because you're like, okay, these are not kids.
mhm,
But you are preparing these people to go right back into the classroom next week, right? Or
mhm.
in the following weeks to teach children. So you want to be impactful.
Awesome. Okay, so when you're talking about facilitator, I want you to kind of speak to teachers that are this is their first year as a facilitator. Like, what advice would you give, knowing what you know now with all your
Mhm.
years of being in the role? Can you give some tips for teachers in coming like August is their first year as a facilitator? Like, what advice would you give them?
I would say planning is everything. Like you're planning. I also think that you want that to be, you want when you're with other teachers, you want the time that they have for you to be meaningful, right? Because how many times have we gone to a professional development and we leave saying, I didn't learn anything. These are things I'm already doing. So you want to make sure that you're innovative, right? You're looking into research-based things that are going to help the students in that district. And I think that's important because where you are and the students that you're serving, you want to do things that's going to work for them. And it's not going to work everywhere. So you
Mhm,
have to hone your skills to these are the students that we're teaching. This is what they need. And so again, you got to look at the data, you have to plan, you have to have brain breaks and things that you would do for kids, right? You wouldn't
mhm,
stand in front of a classroom and you wouldn't just lecture children. You're going to break
mhm,
it up. You're going to have some checks for understanding, some fun little things that you do in between. You want them working in groups, right? You want some innovative things and you want to have some real things that they can do. So whatever you do in your training, you want it to be something that they can take right back to the classroom. Are we doing something together where we are assigning roles and then we're going to
mhm,
read something and then we're going to come up with something and then we have to have them present too. So I did a lot of that when I was a facilitator. I would start off, maybe get them started, and then we would start doing activities, having them do sessions, and then present as a team. And they could present it in a way. They could come up with a skit. They could do a
mhm.
gallery walk. just different things like that. And that's how my classroom ran as well. And so those are
Yeah.
things that teachers can say, oh, I can do this next week. Little icebreakers and things that they can do just to break it up and allow for students to have brain breaks, because we know how our attention span is, but children have an even shorter attention
Right.
span. You want to be talking to them for an hour, it's not going to work. And so
Mm-mm.
I will do some of those things with them, and they be like, oh, okay, I can do this with my class. I can do this next week. I actually can put this in my lesson plan and implement this next week because this is not going to take long. Can
Mhm.
I keep the biggest thing to go to PD, the teacher say, can I keep this? So
Right.
having enough times for them. And also I like to feed people as well. So I always had, a little dish of candy,
Mhm.
throughout my sessions, and then make sure I have some little treats or goodies for them on their
Mhm.
way out. And also always leave your information, because you're going to get so many emails of teachers asking you, well, can I have a copy of your presentation?
Mm.
The activity we did, I can't remember the name of it. I lost it. Can you email it to me? And so
Right.
just making yourself accessible too, because they're
Mhm.
like, even when I was doing that, I was still teaching,
Mhm.
but they were like, okay, so what are you doing in your classroom? And can I share my lesson plans with you? And can you give me
Mhm.
feedback on my lesson plan? So you want to just make sure that you make yourself accessible at the end so that they can also contact you to help them throughout the year. So those are just some little tips on being a facilitator or presenter for the district.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for that. So you and I both we attended the same HBCU, Stillman College, Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Woo woo. I want you to kind of talk to our viewers about how your education at an HBCU help shape you as an educator, like how your experience is helping you in your role and your previous roles that you've had as an educator.
So at Stillman, I felt like it was an extension of growing up in a small town, because there were so many people readily available to help you. They were invested in you from the very beginning. Like they
Mhm.
didn't really have to know you. They were
Mhm.
invested in you from the very beginning. And I think, getting there and then just, you're away from home. It was just a ready-made family. It felt
Mhm.
like I was in a family there. And then I think with me being a part of so many organizations, playing basketball, being in the marching band, I just continued to build on to a family, and everybody was always there. Something happened, you had somebody that was even from that area that could tell you where to go or help you. Even though my parents weren't far away, I still had people right there on campus that could help me.
Mhm.
And so I think that it was an extension, but I mean, the HBCU experience, I mean, it's nothing like it. And you try to explain to people, but you really can't, right? Because you learn so many, great things by
Mhm.
being there. Um, I think, and for the teachers raising the bar as well, your professors,
Yeah.
the professors there were amazing, and they were from so many different places and so many different backgrounds. But I learned so much, and it was such a rich experience for me
Mm.
going to a HBCU and just having that experience, being able to have just good, clean fun, but also go to class and know they're serious, right? They're
Right.
trying to prepare you for the world, and they're real, right? It was very
Mhm.
realistic. No one was, they were telling you how the real world worked. They weren't sugarcoating anything. They weren't holding anything back. And they were also, I feel like they were giving it all right to us. It
Right.
wasn't where let me teach and get my check and go home. It was not, they
Mhm.
were really vested in you. And that's what I really appreciate by going to a HBCU.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Especially going through the education program at Stillman,
Mm-hmm.
it was like you said, that small family. Um, and I would tell people, like people I've worked with that went through larger education programs, not knocking those, but
Mm-hmm.
you can get lost in the shuffle
Yeah.
when you're a number, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And I would tell them, like, you see my small group table? That was the size of the table I sat at in some
Mm-hmm.
of my education courses at Stillman College. It would be myself, a professor and maybe two other people. Sometimes,
Hmm.
like depending on, especially when I got in the higher level,
Right.
and you couldn't just be on your phone.
Mm-mm.
You couldn't opt out of the conversation.
Mm-mm. No.
That was a no-no. So we got a very in-depth education there,
Hmm.
in my opinion, and it has really helped me in shaping like how I teach and how I plan, because I'm still very methodical about planning,
Hmm.
and I'll see some teachers like just throwing stuff together. I'm like, okay, hold on
Mm-mm.
now. We can't and I'm asking questions and they're looking at me like, well, and of course, yes, you do have to find that happy place between the small amount of time we have as teachers to even plan, and then making sure that you have rigor, you are
Right.
everything's leveled appropriately, and you're thinking ahead. These last few years I've been really intentional about like cross curriculum. So what are they learning in science? What are they
Right.
learning in history? And pulling those vocabulary terms together so they're hearing them repeatedly throughout the
And
day.
that vertical planning is key. So if
Yes.
you're not doing that as a teacher, it's going to be hard. You need to be vertically planning, and that time
Mhm.
to be, some administrators will build it into the school year where you're planning with other grades and you're planning with other people in other grades that teach your
Mhm.
content area. But that is so important, and looking at the
Mhm.
standards that they're going to cover in the next grade, and then
Mhm.
looking at the standards that were covered last year and how in your particular grade they're added on to that standard. What do they need to do now? Because usually that's how standards work. They just add on
Mhm.
each year a little bit to that same standard. And
Right.
so all of that is so important when it comes to planning.
Right. You are so right. I'm always trying to get to like, let me talk to this teacher, and because I'm teaching seventh grade,
Hmm.
only taught seventh grade. So I would ask the eighth grade teachers, hey, what is something that you're just kind of seeing continuously like an issue? Okay, let's harp on that this year. Let's just make sure we're really tapping into that, and into that skill. And in my last interview with Dr. Golar, who's an English professor, I was
Hmm.
like, hey, like you are an expert at this.
Right.
So I asked him, I said, what are you seeing in college students that make you think like, ooh, they should have gone over this more? And his answer, like without hesitation, he said thesis statements. They
Hmm.
need to understand what thesis statements are. I'm like, yes. So I've got that in my teacher toolbox that I'm going to be
Hmm.
sharing with
Yeah.
my team. Like, hey, y'all, we need to work on this. I've had to even work with my son, which sometimes, he's a rising senior. And I had conversations with him when I look, because he will try to slip past and submit English papers without me looking at
Right.
them.
Hmm.
And then I see, I'm like, child, you need to proofread this again.
Right.
And I said, I've had to go over that a couple times with him. Like, hey, your thesis needs to be a little stronger. It's not your points
Hmm.
aren't as clear. So, um, that vertical planning is so, so
It's
important,
so
and
important.
backward planning, like
Good
planning based
planning,
on your
yes.
assessment.
Right.
So, it blew my mind when I moved to
Mhm.
Texas, and I had, I'm just a little young buck, just excited to like, let
To
me get in the
teach, to
classroom.
just
Like,
kind
yeah,
of get in there.
put me in, coach. Put me in, coach. I'm ready. So I'm, we're planning, and I'm just looking at, they're just, oh, here's the first lesson we do. And then we're gonna do this lesson. I'm sitting there thinking, like, but where's the test they're gonna take? Like, I see that?
Mhm.
Like, what are we expecting them to learn? Because we're
Right.
just making stuff when we're just putting stuff in the
Mhm.
Excel sheet, checking boxes. And I
Yeah, you
get
got.
it, you're trying to hurry up and get out of this meeting. I got stuff to do.
Mhm.
But it's like, I like to do my work on the front end,
Mhm.
get it out of the way. If it takes me longer going through the assessment and making sure I'm checking off the standards, okay, which one of these is a high leverage standard? Okay, what do we see? What terms is this assessment using? Are we hitting on that enough in the we need to make sure that's going to be some language that we're using throughout our lessons that we're
Mhm.
teaching. And so that was a big, like, kind of sore point when I got, because I kind of felt
Mhm.
the tension when I would ask, like, hey, where's our assessment? They didn't have one. They're like, oh,
Right.
we're gonna make it next week. well, next week,
Mm-mm.
like, hold on, like, I just didn't feel
Right.
comfortable. And then now I'm testing, and everything's big with testing nowadays.
Hmm.
Now my performance is based on what they're doing.
Their performance, right. And so you have to be very strategic. And that's
Mhm,
what I tell teachers that I mentor or coach. I'm like, you have to be very strategic and you need to know what this standard, you have to break this standard down, right? You have to
mhm,
break it down and you need to look at the assessment first. And it
right,
can take, for people who are not used to doing it, it can take a while for them to actually grasp it and actually
mhm,
to do it and then to see the benefits of it. Because if you've
right,
been doing it, you already know I need to look at the assessment first. I need to
yes,
create the assessment first based on this standard that I'm going to teach, and then plan out my lesson and activities based on that.
mhm,
But when you see the actual achievement from the students, not talking about just growth, because I know how some people focus on growth, but when you see that achievement at the end of the year,
mhm,
that's when
mhm,
it hits home that this is the missing link. This is what I should have been doing all along,
yep,
because this is what's going to drive not only my lesson, but drive the data and make sure that my students get everything they need and be prepared for their next year, which is what you want.
exactly. And since we brought up our, vertical planning, can you kinda just, um, give some more detail on just for new educators or educators that are currently, in a program or haven't started their first year? Can you talk about what vertical planning is and why it's important?
So vertical planning for me, like I said, my administrators built it in, but we also took the district's curriculum and pacing guide,
Mhm,
and we actually built our own schedule to make sure we were done teaching all of the standards before testing, right? By the end of
mhm,
February or March, and then we're just reviewing, right? So I've
mhm,
had the time to actually teach these standards. But when you're talking about vertical planning, you are planning with other teachers that either teach your same subject and multiple grade levels, or those that teach different subjects, but you're looking at those standards, right? You're looking at those standards that are the same in each grade, but they just build on each other. And
mhm,
so, in when you meeting with them on a consistent basis, then what I found is that every student is going to the next class prepared the next year for that grade, right? And the teacher doesn't have to go back and do prerequisites. So that
mhm,
is the benefit of it, because you already know what they need to know in the next grade, and you already met with the teachers even before, like second grade. You've met, if you teach, if I was a fourth grade teacher, I love fourth grade. I taught
mhm,
fourth grade for most of the years, about 15 years when I was teaching. I taught fourth grade. So
yeah,
those 9 and 10 year olds, I had to work with the K2 teachers, because in second grade, I'm like, okay, this is the same standard. So then third grade. So when we had our planning, all of us was in one room. Our principal would have subs come in. We planned the entire day. It was either a
mhm,
half day or entire day, but working with them, I could really see, how do you teach this in second grade? And
mhm,
then third grade teacher will share how they teach it. And then I'm like, okay, so this is what I need them to know when they get to fourth grade.
right,
So they, once they saw what I said, oh, okay, they need to know that in fourth grade. So the third grade teacher made sure that when they made it to me, they knew. They
mhm,
knew it, because, and then that helped me. That just, helped me that year, because then I know, okay, they already came to me mastering this standard. So when I do this part in my year, it's very easy. I don't have to go back and try to teach what they missed in second grade, what they missed in third grade. We could
mhm,
just pick up and be rolling. And so now I'm
mhm,
looking at the fifth grade standard to make sure, I'm that they're prepared for fifth grade. So I don't want to be the one they say, well, I know you had Miss Holman, because if you're the only ELA teacher, I mean,
right. Can't get around it.
you
No
can't get
excuse.
around it. It's no excuses. And so I had to make sure that they were prepared. And so it's also, it builds camaraderie between you and
Yep.
your the other teachers. It's not like you're on an island. You have built
Right.
relationships, and then it gets to the point where you don't want to let them down. You want to make
Right.
sure that you're setting them up for success the next year so
Mm.
that you can continue to have that great data, and you can be a reward school or a blue ribbon school, because everybody is all hands on deck, right? Everybody is working together, communicating and collaborating. And that's what you want in a school building. So it's not, you don't feel like it's all on you, like you were saying, that I have to make sure
Mm.
that these children are ready because it's tied to me. You don't have to feel like it's so much weight on your shoulders, because
Right.
you are working with all the teachers in the building to make sure these students are successful from year to year.
You are so right. Like, and how when you were talking about how your principal got subs for your team so you all could plan. When I've only had one principal do that for us, where we were able to plan the entire day with our
Mm-hmm.
team, and it'd be at school, we're not having to come after school, we're not having to use our planning
Mm-hmm.
period and rush through. He got us some substitutes, and I think we did it for like 2 days. We did it
Good.
for
Mm-hmm.
a day, 2 days for each semester. And at that time, I was like, this is amazing. But and
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really appreciate it as much until I got somewhere where they didn't do that.
Right.
And it wasn't an expectation. It was, and I asked about it. They're like, I don't know. It's kind of hard. We got
Mhm.
to, and it was like, we got to do this.
Right.
And like you said, there were times where we met with the other ELA teachers. So sixth, seventh, and eighth grade, we all would meet
Mhm.
together. Then there were times where we would just meet. And we would have our PLCs, and we would just I would meet with the science teacher, because maybe
Mhm.
there were more the science state test was like high leverage at that time. So,
Mhm.
or they were doing some big change and they just wanted ELA to be on board. Hey, is really vocabulary heavy. We need them to do, or when they're working on word problems in math and they're
Mhm.
noticing the students are struggling, I will break out some math word problems in a heartbeat, especially for
Right.
bell ringers. Come
Yes.
on, I need us to look at these key terms and know what they mean. So, yeah, vertical planning is so important. It's very
It's
important.
so important.
Yes. Okay, so let's talk about you transitioning from college to school. I kind of wanted. I'm backing up a little bit, but I want you to kind of talk about that first year of you being a teacher, and what advice you would give yourself now that you know what you know.
Well, it was kind of seamless. Of course, I had first grade, so
Mm.
how, it's 5 and 6 year olds. So how
Mhm.
bad can it be?
Ooh,
But
I can't go there.
uh, it it was kind of it was a seamless process. What I would say worked for me, which will always also be advice to a new teacher. You need a mentor. I had the best mentor teacher, and she was so sweet. She was a first
Mhm.
lady. She had a choir at the school, so she had these little ones singing. But she was just so sweet. But like when I really needed to do something, she was like, "Look, this is how you do this." And
Mm.
in her, and still super nice, but she was amazing. Just coming and checking on me every day. When they asked us to do something, she would come by and say, "Okay, do you understand how to do this? If not, here's the time that I'm available." She checked on me for like the first 1 or 2 weeks where I was just observing another teacher, because what they had a large first grade class of 32 kids, which was absolutely too many for little ones. And so
Wow.
my job, yeah, I know that's how I was looking. They split that class. And so I came in mid-year because I finished that in December at
Okay.
Stillman. But we have one commencement ceremony. And so I had, time. And so I came in January. First couple of weeks, I just observed the other teacher, and she was a veteran teacher. I observed her, prepared my classroom. So most of the first week or two, I'm just observing and preparing my classroom for those kids.
Mhm.
And so she was so infamous. She was bringing me supplies, and she was like, "Have they given you money yet to go buy you some supplies? Well, you can have all of this. These are things that I'm not using." And so, and she was like, here's a storage room of all things that teachers didn't use this year or we didn't need
Mhm.
anymore. And so she was just so she was so encouraging. And
Mm.
it was like that even the next year when she wasn't my mentor teacher anymore. She was always checking on me and bringing me in. And she was like, can you sing? And I was like, yeah, I sing. She was like, okay, well, can you join the choir? So she just made me be like a co-director. And she's like,
Voluntold.
that was voluntold again. And also because my team was mostly older women, I became the person that did all the technology stuff. So anything I'm doing their attendance for them. I'm like, girl, I don't know nothing about this computer. This thing, they gave me this thing, and I don't know what to do. And so I became that for them. You know, every time they found out it was something that I was good at, that became my job.
Mm,
But I would say that's the key: having a mentor, having
mm,
administration that see the value of you having a mentor, and
mhm,
also supporting you. Like it was PDs that I wanted to go to, and I would be afraid to ask. But I was like, what can they say? Yes or no? Basically, my
mhm,
parents taught me that, don't be afraid to ask for anything. What
mhm.
can they say? The worst they can do is say no, right?
Right.
And so I would go ask him, can I go to these PDs? And he was like, yes. I would ask him for things like I think I would be like, this is research based. This is something
Right.
that they're using in other schools that are doing well. Can you order this for my classroom? I think it will really benefit the kids in the school. And so I just had very supportive, people around me. Admin was
Mhm,
supportive. My mentor teacher was supportive. The team that I was on was super supportive. And so for novice teachers, those that are just, getting ready to graduate and go into that classroom, I would say definitely ask for a mentor. If they don't give you one,
mhm,
ask for a mentor, you know, try to build relationship and connections with your team. Don't go in there like you're on an island, but actually, talk to them, spend time with them. That may just be you eating lunch with them every day. We have those days where we need to eat lunch by ourselves. We just need a break from everybody.
yeah,
But maybe saying, let's eat lunch together twice a week as a team.
mhm,
Plan your trips together with your team. Like really, be team oriented, and then also ask for those supports, because what I
mhm,
found is that every school doesn't see the value in providing new teachers with a mentor or a
mhm,
coach, or supporting them, not just saying, well, this is how we did in the past, really being open to, okay, this is what they're asking for, this is what they feel they need, let me do that for them, let me provide that support for them. And so
mhm.
that's the advice that I would give new teachers.
That is good. Can you talk about maybe give some advice to a mentee when they get a mentor? Like what would be some advice for them on like how to communicate with their mentor? Because I have seen some mentee mentor relationships kind of rocky
Mm-hmm.
in my experience. I actually experienced that one time myself, and it was tough to go through, and it was my host teacher. And I didn't know I had stuff I was kind of oblivious to some things that it was happening kind of behind my back really.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so difficult to deal with because I'm like, okay, I don't feel like I want to run and tell it. I feel like, oh, can I handle this by myself? What should I
Mm-hmm.
say? I don't want to seem like a tattletale, because it's that little, like you were talking about those relationships, that little p
Mm-hmm.
politics when you're working at a school that can make or break your
It
experience as a
can. It
teacher.
really can. And it can make you even leave the field. And you could be a wonderful teacher, but just, really probably just need to be in a different school or on a different team in a different grade level. But it
Mhm,
can really have an impact on you, and maybe even make you go, start thinking about not being educated, education, and doing something else when it's really something that you love, and it kind of fulfill your purpose.
mhm,
And so, what I would say with those relationships, if it's not going well, maybe have a conversation with them, you know, and that could be difficult for some people, but maybe just have a conversation and maybe ask them, okay, maybe we got, maybe we didn't have the best start, maybe we need to start over,
yeah,
or communicate with them. Okay, this is the type of learner I am. This is
mhm,
how I would prefer that you address me or speak to me or talk to me or even handle me, right? If you
right,
see something, this is how I would like to be approached.
Mm.
because as a mentor or coach, what I do is I give a needs assessment. I just scheduled an email to go out to my teachers on Monday, just sending
Mhm.
them a needs assessment to see, how they want me to communicate with them.
Right.
What days would they like to meet with me? Um, what do they feel is the type of support they need from me, giving me feedback on the year, like those type of things. Every mentor and coach may not do that, and so
Mhm.
that may be something you need to do as the mentee, saying, this is how I would like you to communicate this is how I would like you to talk to me or address things that
Right.
you see. Have that conversation with them, and then if that doesn't work, then maybe ask your another teacher that you may have observed in the building, ask your principal, could this person potentially be my mentor? And because, I like this person, but I don't think she's the right mentor for me.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, because I will tell people just in my little experience that
Hmm.
just because you're cool with a teacher, like maybe you
Hmm.
meet them, you're new at the school, and y'all run into each other and have a great conversation in the teachers lounge, and you're like, "Ooh, they could be a good mentor." Mm-mm.
Hmm.
They may not
Hmm.
be a good. They may be a great person to probably vent to, but as far
Hmm.
as like building you up as a teacher, they may not be best equipped for that.
Hmm. That's
So don't.
another great point. Stay out of the teacher lounge.
Yeah, that was the first tip that we got
Stay
instilled in.
out of there.
Stay out of there, stay out of there, stay out of there. You go in, you go out.
Hmm.
Pop
Warm up
in
your food.
and leave.
Right. Get your drink out the refrigerator. Say hi to everybody. Go
Hey,
to the
how y'all doing?
restroom and go back to your classroom.
Mm-mm, it's tempting. You'll be in there talking about something. Hey, what y'all talking about? No, don't do it because now
Mm-mm.
you're sucked in. You go down a
Don't
rabbit
do it.
hole. Nah,
Right.
we don't have enough time as it is, so you really don't have
Right.
time to be up in there. I'm like, yo, how
Uh-uh.
long y'all been up in here talking?
Right. And where are your
Yeah,
where are
right.
your students? Are
Where
they
are
still
your
in the
students?
cafeteria? Go get your
Go
students.
get them up in there. Got one teacher in the cafeteria wrangling all these kids. Like, where is
Right.
everybody? They in there
Where are
gossiping.
you at? Get in there. Go do your job.
Do your job.
Right.
Oh my goodness, that was so funny. Okay, so I'm gonna switch gears a little bit, and
Hmm.
I want to talk about your book that I got my copy.
Yay!
Parents, children, home, creating a supportive learning environment during a pandemic and beyond. I did not know this book existed when I was going through the pandemic, and looking at it when it finally came, it came in today, so I haven't gotten a chance to read it.
Hmm.
But when I was just perusing, I said, "Man, this is great." It's a short read. You're not going through it's
Mm-mm.
you're not reading an encyclopedia. It's to the point.
Hmm.
And can you talk about your journey to creating this piece
Hmm.
and kind of like how you did it? You can, give some tips to someone who maybe wanting to be an author as well.
Yes. So pandemic hit and school was out.
Mhm.
And then I always working in inner city schools, I really knew that a lot of kids were not being raised by their parents, right?
Mhm.
They were raised by grandparents or
Yeah.
aunties, uncles, it was by everybody, And so I was just, I don't know, it was just hard on me because I kept thinking about those kids. I was like,
Right.
so they're at home, they were in this safe place, that a lot of students come from broken homes and homes that may not be the safest and they feel safest at school.
Mhm.
There's also a lot of kids that don't have meals.
Yeah.
School is that place where I eat. And so all of a sudden, the place where they feel the safest and that they get what they need it's
Mhm.
closed. And
Right.
so I just kept thinking about them being at home. And of course, they're with their families. Most of them, were in pretty decent homes where, they had someone there with them, but just thinking about the learning, right? What is going to happen now that they're out of school?
Mhm.
Where's the learning going to come from? And so I was like, for a lot of my parents who were older or grandparents, they were always asking, okay, so what do I do when they're on a break? Are you going to send them packing home?
Right.
I'm like, a packet? I don't think they're going to learn
Yeah.
from that. But I was just thinking about what could I do, and I always thought that I would write a book. I always
Mm.
knew I wanted to write a book, but I just never. I didn't think I had the time, and also I didn't know what genre would it be, what style, what type of book. Am I writing a children book, or am I writing a
Yeah.
book to teachers, or am I writing a book to parents? So it all came together. It just clicked one day, and I just started writing. My husband was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I'm writing, and I don't know what it's going to become. Maybe it's a
Mhm.
book, maybe it's a journal, maybe it's a podcast. I don't know." So
Yeah.
I was writing every day. I was writing. I was, I had in my mind, I'm going to write this many words, this many pages each day.
Mhm.
And so my husband had self-published a book a couple years prior.
Okay.
And so I was like, okay, so I know I can self-publish it if I don't find a publisher. And I was like, I don't even have time to go through that process of trying to find a publisher. I need to
Mm.
get this out here. And so finished it, sent it out to a couple of my ELA friends, which are amazing. Sent it out to them, those that work with me, those that worked with me in the past, and some parents. So I sent it to
Okay.
various people. I sent it to from friends that are not in education,
Mhm.
that went to Stillman or other universities. I sent it to some of the parents of some of my best students for them
Mhm.
to read, and then I sent it to ELA teachers, and I had them read it. And then I had one ELA teacher to kind of edit it for me, made those edits, and then my husband, I went to him and I was like, "I'm ready. How do I get this self-published?" And
Right.
so he walked me through the process. So basically, after I wrote it, editing, got the feedback from people. I
Mhm.
just got feedback from some people. Now I didn't want them to edit it. Just give me your feedback. Read what I
Right.
have and tell
What
me
you
what
think?
you think.
Mhm.
And then I did a lot of self-reflection, which I'm pretty good at. And then after that was just finding a company that would print it and distribute it for me at a great price or rate.
Okay.
And so that became Amazon for me. Did that,
Mhm.
went through all the steps. My husband was right there with me. He was like, "Well, you need a picture on the front." So he helped me find a photo that I like. And he was like, "Okay, what are you naming this book?" And so I went through a couple names. We had to search and make sure there are no other books by this
Right.
name.
Mhm.
Had to choose a picture that I thought was really resonate with parents who were at home working with their students
Mhm.
at various times, not only a pandemic, which is why I said beyond, because I was like, you
Mm.
need these strategies during fall break, during
True.
winter break,
True.
during summer break,
Mhm.
getting your kids prepared for college. So I wanted to include that as well. But once we got all that together and sent that in, it was a done deal. And so finally got it out and in hands and people hands in the
Mhm.
beginning winter of 2021.
Okay.
And so that was my journey.
Wow. So, I I was saying earlier, like, oh, I wish I had this because, especially as an educator with children,
Mm-hmm.
when we got into that mode, and at that point, I was having to teach online, in
Mm-hmm.
person. Then I'm having to also manage my son, who
Mm-hmm.
is getting his stuff done. My husband had started teaching as well, and so we were just, and I don't think a lot of people will think about that. And I'm not saying that teachers are above other people, but I know, like, the teachers in the district where I was, right when that happened, we almost had like a revolt with our admin. We said, hey, there needs to be some type of plan for us to bring our children to school, because they can't go if we're having to come in and teach online, because they wouldn't allow us to teach from our homes
Mm-hmm.
online, which is understandable. Like, I really
Right.
didn't care to teach at home, with my stuff. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, no, if my stuff break down, I don't want them to blame me.
Ooh, I taught from home, girl. It was it was
I
a
can't
lot.
deal. I can't deal. Like, let me go in
A
my
lot.
classroom. I need to feel like I'm out of my element. Like, go in
Mm-hmm.
my classroom. I have all my things there. If I need to refer to something, I've got my books. Everything's there. And then they brought us in. They brought our student. Our If you had a child, they were, especially if they were, older, they had
Mm-hmm.
them in a room. Hey, y'all go down in this classroom or in the library and you're working. They had them spaced out with their masks on. And that was such a great call. But it really took the teacher standing up and saying, hey, um, we need some help. Like, we can't
Right.
just come in.
Mm-mm.
We've got children that need help as well. And they hired, I think, um some tutors from a local university, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, at UNT, and they would go and they would just monitor, and they let everybody know, like, hey, they're not helping your student, with their work
Mm-hmm.
per se.
Right.
Don't want to rely on them, but they're at least there to kind of help field tech questions, any kind of
Mm-hmm.
activity issues. And I think that was a really good call by our admin at that time, because it was so overwhelming to have to worry about your own children on top of everybody else's children in this new environment that we have, and as much as
Yeah.
teachers pivot, that was hard.
Right. We are some special people. Those are that taught. I don't know. The government needs to do something for us. Somebody needs to do something. If you taught during the
Yes.
pandemic, it was a lot. I taught from home, but in March they brought us back in the building. So it was like
Mhm.
that. I had some students that were at the school with me, and then the rest of my students were at home or at a daycare
Yeah.
in a
Mhm.
back room learning. And so it was a huge shift for everyone. And
Mhm.
it's like we were building the plane while we were flying it. It was a lot. And but we made it. We made it through, but yeah, it
Mhm.
was
Man.
very difficult, especially if you had your own children as well.
Right. Could you talk about, and this, and I kind of, because I want to be able to talk to you about not only like professional stuff, but a little bit of family, personal, because
Hmm.
there were some things that I kind of wish that I knew about managing my family and my me time as a
Hmm.
teacher. Could you talk a little bit about, I guess, how would I put this? Just how you manage being a mom and a
Hmm.
teacher, because and with that, tell us if you've ever like taught at the same school where your sons have gone. But can you kind of talk about something, give some teachers some tips about motherhood and being a teacher? Because I tell people all the time, there have been times where I think like, whoa, I've been talking to other people's children more than I've been talking to my own
Hmm.
children this week. And I would have to like, oh crap, let me go talk to my child and ask them how their day's been. I'm asking kids how their day has been all day long, and then I get
Right.
home and I kind of don't want to talk anymore. And
Yeah.
that's just me being real.
And that's real. That is
Hmm.
real. And all educators who have children, they go through it. It's not an educator that doesn't. For me, um, when I found out I was pregnant with my first son, I said to myself, I cannot bring work home. I
Mm,
wanted my house to be a sacred place for just me and my family, and I didn't want to be bringing work home. And so then I made up in my mind that I would just have to be a better manager of my time.
mm,
We all have the same time during the day. It's just how we manage it.
yeah.
And so for me, once he was born and I finally made it back home, because I mean to work, because I was thinking about each time I was like, okay, so how can I stay at home? Because I don't want my baby to be with anybody else but me. But when I finally made it back to work, I was like, okay, how can I do this? And so for me, I didn't bring work home, but that meant that I had to be very strategic about each and every day. And so for
Mhm,
some mornings, that meant I went in an hour early and I would take my baby to school at 6, or my husband would take them later.
mm,
But that meant that hour, I knew what I was doing. I had everything laid out the day before so I could go right in and start working. I
mhm,
also strategically had a different day for everything during my planning period. So my teammates knew I wasn't going out to eat lunch with them during the
mm,
day. I wasn't going to talk to anybody. Every day, every planning period was specifically for something. So Monday, maybe I was grading paper during my planning time. Tuesday, I may have been putting those grades in the system. Wednesday was a day I think I had for my parents, for parents that couldn't see me before school or after school. If they wanted to come during my planning time that day to discuss academics or behavior, that was that day. Tuesday may be a PLC, collaborative planning meeting. And then Friday, I was doing something during my planning period to prepare, lesson plans. I was preparing my lesson plan. So I would find my assessment, plan out my lesson plans, get my activity together, and make whatever copies that I needed to
mhm,
make. And when I was teaching science, I knew what day I was going to do my lab the next week. So I would have my lab materials together. And so I had to play it like that. And if I had a meeting, because I was on the leadership team, if I had a meeting after school, then I planned that ahead and let my husband know, dinner's ready, or whatever. I'll grab dinner or whatever. You get the boys. So, a lot of communication with him. And then sometimes, that meant I stayed at school late. And so my husband would pick up the kids, or the one at that time. But then also, if I dropped my baby off at daycare early, that means I left work as soon as school was out and went to get them, because I didn't
Mm.
want them to be
All
at
day.
daycare all day either. I'm like, I don't want my baby to be there from 6 to 6,
That's
and
12
so,
hours.
yes, that is too
We
long.
don't want to be
And
at work from 6 to 6.
exactly. So those were some things that I did. Um, I just made sure my family was first. And I had a principal ask me when we were pastoring the church in Memphis, and he was like, "Miss Holman, how do you do it all? How are you able to give these kids and us everything?" And I said, honestly, when I leave out of this parking lot in the afternoon, I don't think about this school until I return the next day. You have to set healthy boundaries as an educator, because it will consume you, because you want to be so good and you want to do your very best for the students that you're servicing in that community. And that's honorable, but I felt like I can do it without sacrificing my family.
Okay, that I need to take some of that advice. I like your tip about having something for each day during your planning period, something
Mm-hmm.
different, because I know I've found myself trying to do it all. Even with you just saying, okay, I grade on this day, but I don't enter into the grade book until the next
Mm-hmm.
day. I
Because
need
you
to
don't have
set,
enough time. You don't have enough
yeah.
time, because my planning period was only, I think the least amount of time I had was 30 minutes, and the most was maybe an hour.
Hmm.
And we're talking about 18 years of teaching. And so I had to be very strategic. And then you got to go to the restroom during that time.
Hmm.
And if you needed to meet with a student during your lunch, then you had to eat your lunch during your planning. It was, that you
Yeah.
have days like that as an educator. And so
Hmm.
I had to just be strategic like that. I had to, because I didn't want to take it home.
Yes, I need to get, especially this year, now that I have 2 under 2. Would not
Mm-mm.
recommend, just letting y'all know
Mm-mm.
that I have 2 under 2. I I love them to pieces though, but I definitely need to, and I've already started me
Mm-hmm.
planning for the year. I've already kind of been putting some things together. I've gotten our scope and sequence already because I was
Mm-hmm.
teaching 5th
That's
grade
important. Right.
before. And people don't think about this. Oh, teachers, y'all are off for the summer.
You're planning.
You're planning during the summer. At least a teacher that's worth their salt is going to be
Right.
planning at some point during this. Yes, I may not have to go into a building, but I'm
But you're still
constantly,
planning.
yes, I'm thinking, because I've
Mm-hmm.
gone, you have teachers going from switching grade levels, switching
Mm-hmm.
districts.
Switching classrooms. Then
Yes,
you want to decorate your room differently. You
yes,
may want to put in different systems because you know the group that you're getting, or
right.
just your personal goal. I want to be more organized this year. How does that
Mhm.
look? How do I get
Exactly.
these new things that I want?
Yeah.
Am I going to pay for
Ooh,
myself?
I
Am I going
know.
to ask somebody? Yeah.
Do I need to go fund me this year for my class?
Right. GoFundMe, donor shoes. What am I
Yes,
doing?
you're so right. So I love that tip about doing, the grading one day and then the grading one day and then entering it in the grade book, because
And it was a team thing as well. So I think
oh,
we talked, it was a team where I was cluster chair for many years, which meant third, fourth, and fifth grade. I was like
mhm.
lead. And so it was something we did as a full cluster. And of course, some people are gonna, detour and not do it, but I made sure I stuck to it, which
Yeah,
was
okay.
important for me, because some of your teammates won't have children, some of them won't have a spouse, and so they are easily take it home and work every night and work on the weekends. And I was like, fine, that works for you, but for me, like me in my house,
Yes.
no.
Ooh, okay, so that's a good caveat, being able to manage that time. That's a good caveat into what I want to talk to you about next, in where it comes to pursuing advanced degrees as
Mm-hmm.
a teacher, mom. Can you talk about first, like, let's just talk about your decision to pursue your advanced degrees. So your master's, and then you've gone on to your EDS, and you're currently working on your doctorate, right?
Yes. Ooh, yes.
Talk about the decision for each of those, um, and like what brought you to them. Let's talk
Mm-hmm.
about that first.
So my master's, I want to say, and it was weird. So every time I started the first two advanced degrees, I became pregnant. So I was like, what's going on? God, you have some type
Everybody
of
says
sense of
that.
humor, some type of sense of humor. So I started working on my master's. I was still a newlywed. I think it was '06. So I had been married 2 years then. We had purchased, we had built our home. And I was just thinking about there was more for me. And it may mean that I'm still in the classroom, but I felt like it was more for me to learn. And it wasn't like PD learning, it was institutional learning that I needed. And I think maybe also thinking about the way education was changing and how the type of students that we were beginning to have, I just felt like I needed more. And so I started my master's, and it was supposed to be a 2 year program, but of course I had a baby.
Yeah.
And so when I had him, he was my first. I took off a year. And so it took me a little longer, only 3 years. It took me 3 years. So I finished in '09. And a couple months later, it's when God told us to move to Memphis, Tennessee. And so
Okay.
I made it to Memphis, and my boys, oh, and I was supposed to address that in the last question, but no, my boys never went to school with me. They
Okay.
always went to their neighborhood school, which I thought was important because I wanted them to know the kids that lived around us. I also wanted
Mhm.
them to be able to walk to school. And because my husband, how his job was structured, he could get to them. He was closer to them because I always commuted to my school. And
Okay.
so that was all why they always went to their own school. But when I made it to Memphis, um, they were in their neighborhood school, and they always have been in school districts for the most part, different
Mm,
district from me. I've always
okay.
been in inner city, and then our home has always been like on the outskirts. And so um at the time it was Memphis City schools, and then it was Shelby County schools. Shelby County was where my boys were in. And so they had this merger
Mhm.
for a year. They was going to merge the schools, but then they
Mhm.
was going to demerge because everybody was going to become a municipal so that they would be connected to the inner city schools. And you kind of, if you know
Yeah,
what I'm saying,
people
you know the reason for
people got
that.
upset, yeah. Mhm.
Yes. And so I was like, I need options. So at that time, it was about more about options. So I was like, I need to get my EDS. And then when I was getting my EDS, they was like, well, you can also get your admin license. And I was like, well, what would that entail? And they was like, really, you'll do a practicum with a principal, and then you'll take the admin assessment. And I was like, oh, that's it. Okay, yes, let's do that. Because I didn't know how this merger and demerger was going to what
Mhm.
was going to happen, and I needed to make sure my career was secure. And
Mhm.
so that was the reason for that. So I did the EDS, I did the admin license, and then I again was thinking about my future aspirations in education as I began doing all these other things like facilitating and doing things with curriculum and coaching. And I was like, okay, so Lord, what are you telling me? And so I started thinking about, okay, pursuing my doctorate. And I thought about it for a year or two before I actually said, okay, let's put the application in, let's find the right institution and all of that. And so that kind of made me start working on my doctorate, because now I'm in a place of instruction and curriculum that's
Mhm.
like, and coaching. And so, thinking about what I would possibly want to do in the future, even once I get my doctorate. And so that was kind of like my journey to where I am now.
Okay, awesome. So, with your when you talked about your EDS, you mentioned a practicum. Can you explain to us what is a practicum? Like, what does it look like, and
Hmm.
um, kind of like what made you decide on, and tell us about what your practicum was in, and like what happened,
Hmm.
like how it went. Can you just talk to us about that?
Yeah. And so at Stillman, we did many practicums throughout the education program. Like just in case you went to a rural area and you teaching, but you also teaching PE. So we
Right.
had a practicum for physical education. You had a practicum for students with extreme
Disability.
disabilities. And
Mhm.
so a practicum is when you spend some time, you go in kind of like an internship where you working hand in hand, side by side with people that are currently doing that job, and just making sure you hone in on what are they doing, what does it take, what should I be doing, what does a day look like in this position. And so my practicum for my admin license is that, and I was pregnant again. I told you when I start working on something, started working on that degree, but it was a program that was only Saturdays. It was perfect because I
Oh,
had to find the right
wow.
program. So it was Union University out of Jackson, Tennessee, but they had a campus in Germantown, Tennessee, which was like 15 minutes from my house.
Oh, that's
Literally
perfect.
three Saturdays a month. We were in the building from 8 to 3 learning. I could drive home for lunch and see my babies, and I could drive back, spend the rest of the day. And one Saturday was like a discussion board where, it was a question put out there by the professor. Everybody responded to it, and then you had to respond to 2 or 3 classmates. It was perfect for teachers and families. And so that's how that program was designed. But it was only 18 months. So I could not, I was like, okay, I'm having this baby, Lord, but I can't miss a class or anything because I would be dropped because it's only 18 months. And so once I decided to do the admin portion, I spent that summer. It was the last, I was going into my third trimester with my youngest. And I went to summer school with the principal. And the principal was like, look, it's hot, you pregnant, you cannot come to this school every day. We are not doing that. And she was a summer school principal. She was amazing. She was like, look, you come to this building 2 or 3 days a week. You let me know what days you coming, and the rest of the days you stay at home. So it's just a
That's a
testament to
blessing.
God. Yes, always looking out for me, always making sure I work with the right people, and
Mhm,
I've always had like favor. Wherever I was, it was people that just naturally gravitated to me and loved me and were willing to do whatever I needed them to do at the time. But yeah, that's how that happened. I spent that summer doing that practicum, and then I think I took the admin assessment that following spring, and we graduated in July of 2013. So
wow.
yeah.
Okay, so basically your practicum was like summer school or
Summer school, and I was there with her, and she was just guiding me on administrative things. This is how you do this. If you become a principal of the school, this is how you handle if a child gets in trouble. This
Mm,
is the process. So mainly just telling me these are the processes. This is how you handle this. This is how you would send this
mm,
email. This is how you would talk to this parent. You would call them first, and then
mm,
you would send home a notification with the child, and
mhm,
then you will have them come in. And if they appeal, then this is the process. So basically, that you want to walk around, just your daily duties as an administrator. Going around,
mhm,
greeting the teachers, email, getting our communication timely, maybe want to create a newsletter. So just those types of things,
mhm,
knowing your staff, what happens if someone don't show up for work, how to work
mhm,
it. If you have other people like TAs or other people, dedicated A's or whatever, how you could work them, making
mm,
sure everybody have their break. Just those administrative things that you don't think about as a teacher, that you may not even know that your administration is doing. Those were the type of things that she went over with me during that summer. And mind you, it was only like 6 to 8 weeks,
yeah.
but it was very insightful. I learned so much.
Mhm,
She was so patient and kind. And she, how sometimes someone may be teaching you something and they're trying to hold back. They don't want to tell
mm.
you everything. She was like an open book,
Oh,
you
that's
know.
perfect then.
Yeah.
I love that, and I think, going into, a practicum at during summer school is really good for whoever your host is, like, whoever the
Hmm.
principal is and you, because it's not as you don't have as much going on during
Right.
summer as you do during the regular
Hmm.
school year, so you can get a little more in depth, like you said, on
Right.
those administrative tasks, so
Hmm.
I like that. So, okay, just when you send me your bio and just from what I know about you just personally, you've taught in different districts. Y'all have, I'm not gonna say you moved a lot, but you've been to different states
Yes.
teaching. Can you give some advice on to teachers about, what things to look out for, what you need to do before you move, all of that. Because I tell people all the time, me, I was trained to be a teacher in Alabama and then started
Same
teaching
for me.
Texas,
Mhm.
and it was like night and day.
Night and day. Yeah.
So can you talk about movement for you and best practices for people that are having to change states or change districts, and what you need to look out for, what you need to ask about before you
hmm
move, interviewing, all that.
I would say do your research,
Mhm.
especially me being here not even a year yet here in the DC area. Do your research, ask lots of questions, and people, they have to be patient with you when it comes to asking the questions, because just like they're interviewing you, you're interviewing them. And my husband had to help me with that. And now I walk into any interview just confident, because I'm interviewing you as well to see, is this the right place for me?
Yeah.
Do you have the right climate and culture that I would like to work in and be and feel like I'm successful? And so for me, it's doing that research ahead, looking at the type of schools, looking at the trends. It's a website called Niche where you can look at any school and it tells you everything about that school.
Mm-hmm.
There are comments there to review. And so for me, it's doing that research. It's also trying to get a feel of it, asking those questions on your interview, and then also, being willing to ask for what you want. Ask the hard questions, right? How's your climate and culture, right? Ask,
Mm-hmm.
can you talk to one of the teachers? Go in for a tour. Do those
Right.
types of things, and then have your demands ahead. Because if you're moving somewhere like here where it's extremely expensive, you need to think about negotiating. Ask
Mm-hmm.
about the insurance, especially if you're the carrier for your family. Ask how good the insurance is. Ask about the 401k. Talk about turnover. What's happening? Why has it been so much turnover at your school? How
Mm-hmm.
long has your admin been there? Just doing research, asking a lot of questions, having your demands at the very beginning. This is like, if the cost of living is a lot, and it's a lot everywhere, but especially in areas like this, you want to make sure you are bringing home enough to make sure you're satisfied with your decision and that you're able to take care of your family. And so all of those things come into play. And do you want to try to get in the area, in the actual neighborhood or city in which you're moving to, or would you
Mm-hmm.
be willing to commute? Because some of them would actually offer moving costs, if you're moving for your job, or even if you're moving for your spouse's job, that may be something they will offer you as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are all the things, those are some tips that I would offer if you are moving somewhere else. You especially want to look at their standards to make sure you're prepared, because it's an adjustment, as you know, going from Alabama state standards. Then I got to Tennessee and I learned those and was an expert at those. And then now I'm living in in Maryland and working in DC. And then
Mm-hmm.
there's, a lot of them are just using Common Core standards, which I was
Right.
used to working in a district that we had our own standards for our state, and then we had our pacing guide. And so, it's a lot. The move itself is a lot, but then also making sure that you're ready professionally to enter the classroom of school here.
Okay. Yes, because I tell people now, just from going to different districts, I've learned, like you said, you're interviewing them
Mm-hmm.
just like they're interviewing you.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be okay with asking some tough questions, because you don't
Mm-hmm.
want to sign that contract and then you're like, "Oh, I should have asked them about
Ask
this."
about that.
There are certain things that for me, like, I have to know. I need to be able to see a classroom. What will my classroom look like?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm that person. I need to be, because I've had a classroom before where I could only have my desk in the front of the classroom. I don't want my desk in the front of the classroom. I
Mm-mm.
want to be
No,
behind the students.
exactly.
For me, I had to say, you know what? I'm gonna have to turn this down unless you have another classroom where I can move my desk to the back of
Mm-hmm.
the class.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, "Oh, we've never had a teacher thing." I'm like, "No, that's part of my classroom
Mm-hmm.
management.
Right.
I'm not gonna be in front of them. I need them because I love my kids. They'll turn around and look. Hey, may I help
Mhm.
you? I'm looking right at you.
Right. What are you supposed to be doing? Are you on task?
You looking at me? Do you need something? How may I help
Right.
you?
Question.
Now you trying to see what I'm doing to see if I'm
Mhm.
looking at you, looking at me, looking at
Right.
I see. But yes, asking those questions and about turnover, how I because I had a one of my mentors was like, "Hey, don't say, why do they have turnover? Ask them, hey, in the past, what have been challenges with this
Mhm.
team, with the team, like what are some things we need to look out for?" And they know what you mean, but
Yeah.
it comes off a little smoother because
Mhm.
it sometimes when you say turnover, it's like almost pointing the finger at admin, but
Mhm.
you will know what
Yeah.
happened based on how the admin is. And I used to be like, well, no, folks can kind of fake the funk. No, if you're really paying attention to the
Mhm.
room, you can tell kind of who's really running the show. It may not be
Mhm.
the principal, it may be the
Exactly.
team lead over here that's
Mhm. Or
really
the
hiring
executive
you.
director or the veteran teachers. And
Yes.
how I approach that question with turnover, I say, well, I saw some of the reviews from the last 2 years. Can you speak to those?
Mm,
And they
like
know
that.
those reviews. Everybody reads the reviews, right? If you're not
Yes.
reading your reviews about your school, then you're
Mhm.
already behind. And so
Yes.
they know exactly what you're talking about when you ask them about those reviews and comments,
Mhm.
and then they can address those. Yes.
Yes, you gotta find out. Find out how often do y'all get paid? What day do you get paid on? Because you don't want
Mhm.
to sign the
All of that.
contract.
Once you get the contract, then you ask those other personal questions. You
Right.
want to get the
Ye
offer
yeah,
first.
right, yeah. Well, ooh, let me back up. Make sure don't be
Right.
asking them in your interview.
Right. Don't
When
ask
they
them in the interview.
when
Ask
they
your
call you.
interview questions. Then when they send you a first offer, ask some more questions, and then say,
Yes.
then be ready to negotiate after that first offer.
Right.
Tell them,
Exactly, yes.
okay, set your limit and say, okay, they probably gonna meet me right here. So let me say
Mhm.
this. And then once you get that final offer, then you can
Yes.
ask some more questions.
Now, when do we get paid? The
Right.
26th of each
When do
month.
we get paid?
Okay, what about Christmas? Do y'all pay before
Right.
Christmas?
How
Is it
how
gonna
much
be 40 days
vacation do
before?
I have?
Right. How
How
many
many
do I
sick leave days?
You have to know that stuff, and
You
it's
have to
like little
know.
things, and you
Mhm.
don't think about it until after my first year, I had a whole list of stuff. I said, "Ooh,
Mhm.
I'm making sure I answer this."
And it's
You
hard to
all
go back. It's
yeah.
hard to go back. It's hard after that first year to go ask them for something or
Mhm.
start questioning them. So you have to get all of that up, and you
Yes.
cannot be afraid to ask them. You have to ask them.
Yes. You have to like one of my biggest ones. How what kind of copier do you have? Do you only have one working copier at your school?
Do I have
Does
my
it
own
always
printer?
jam up? Yeah. Can I
Do I
bring
have
my
my
own
own
printer?
printer?
Can I bring my own refrigerator? Because
Right. Do you
one year
have desks or tables?
yes, right. I need to see. I need to know, like, ask all that
No,
type of stuff, and it seems small, but it will because I'm spending the entire day in this classroom, so I need it to be as comfortable as possible.
as possible. Right.
Yes. Do I have my own thermostat in my classroom, or are we on
Mhm.
a
And I
like
adjust it myself. Or does the board adjust it?
yes, because they people don't know, teachers don't know
They
that
don't
there are
know.
some districts where they control their schools from the
Mhm.
central office, which is
Yes.
probably 20 miles away,
Mhm.
and you just in there. And
Absolutely.
I would tell my students, like, don't come in here complaining about the temperature because I wear about
Mhm.
3 layers all year.
All year long.
I have 3 teacher appropriate outfits on every day.
Mhm.
I have my
Same
jean
for
jacket.
me. Mhm.
I have my go-to denim jacket that like goes with everything. That's like because it's got
Mhm.
pockets everywhere in it. Then I have like a little cardigan.
Yeah, I was just
Those
about to
kind
say I have my cardigan, I have my blue jean jacket, then I have a little casual jacket.
right.
Whatever I wear that day, something that can fit in. Yep.
It will go with it. Then
Mhm.
I had like you have to little stuff like that. You have to ask about it. So I appreciate you sharing your experience and um moving your things. Okay, so can you talk a little bit about organization, class organization, and your teacher items because people may or may not know this, but a lot of times teachers, we're either on the edge of being a hoarder or we or we are hoarders.
Yes, absolutely. Because we
I'm
hold
still
on to everything.
yes, because we're
I may
thinking like
need
I may
it.
use
I
this.
may need it. I hadn't taught fifth grade in 10 years, but I may go back to fifth grade. So I'm gonna hold on to all of this.
I swear
Ah,
every time we get to the end of the paper towel roll or the toilet paper roll, I double like check, like, ooh, do I want to throw this away? What if we need this next year?
Yes. Like, what is wrong with me?
What kind of craft are we gonna use? And I'm not gonna use it because I don't like
No,
dealing with all that stuff. I asked the
no.
art teacher, hey, can you save these for me?
Right.
So can you talk about like some tips that you have for organization, for kind of deciding what you keep and what you don't keep? Because
Mhm,
there may be some tips out there. You've been in the game 18 years. What are some tips that you can give some new teachers out there on how to
mhm.
organize and how to keep up with things?
Well, when I was teaching, I always had like a supply closet. So I
Mhm.
made sure that times throughout the year that I would clean it out, especially if it's something it's been in there every year. I'm like, who can I give this to? Something that we did is we had teachers to put out things that they weren't using anymore. And
Mhm.
so other teachers could come in the teachers lounge and just grab them,
Yeah.
so because you have new teachers, they're just starting, they don't have a lot. And
Mhm.
so either giving them to my mentor teacher or just putting them out so other teachers can get them, that helped me. And then I'm already a person that hates clutter. I don't
Mhm.
like clutter and I don't like piles on my desk. So I was always cleaning out. I gave my students things a lot of times, especially
Mhm.
those little bossy students. I'm like, girl, take this. They be like, okay, because I be teaching my little sister and brother at home. Anyway, yes,
Okay.
take this, add this to your classroom, your teacher stuff that you have at your house. Now, your mother may be mad at me, but
Take it with
I
you.
need to get rid of it. So that helped me as well. And then just having a lot of organizational type furniture and items in my classroom to help me. And so my classroom was always organized. I had my teammates used to talk about me, and they was like, "This girl has to put her hands on everything before she leaves the building." I had to straighten up
Mhm.
everything on my desk, everything,
Yes.
because I wanted my classroom to be prepared for the students when they came in that morning. I didn't want to
Right.
be trying to rush there. I knew that I was going to get there just in time. And so I wanted everything to be ready as soon as I walked in. So that was part of it, but also sending those things home. You don't need to keep everything. Like I did
Right.
the Wednesday folder where I sent home like the students' conduct for the week, as well as their graded papers for parents to sign. And I was like, keep the papers. Just send back the form where your parents sign saying that they saw your graded papers. If it's a student that we're collecting data on and I need it for a meeting, that's different. But
Mhm.
for the rest of them, I'm like, take your papers home. Do not leave them in your folders. Go home, take
Mhm.
the papers out, let your parents look at them, have them sign the sheet saying they did see them, and that's it. And
Mhm.
so those are just some little tips with organization. And then it also depends on what grade you have as well. Because I think,
Yeah.
you can become a hoarder easily because teachers don't like to we don't like to get rid of things. But those were just some tips, but also depend on what grade you're in as well. There are
Yeah.
different ways to organize based on the age of children that you have. And they can help you too, especially if you have the older ones. They can help you stay
Mhm.
organized and get rid of things.
Yes, I was so proud of myself last year when it was when I was teaching 5th grade because I had been wanting to do, I never got around to it, was organizing my classroom library. And I had it organized to a point, but I really wanted a system. So what I
Mm-hmm.
did, I bought some color coded little stickers from Amazon,
Mm-hmm.
and I created a system like nonfiction was this color, fiction this color, all that. So I created my list, had the color. I created like a legend with the colors on them. And what I wanted to do was create like a checkout system with an
Mm-hmm.
Excel sheet. I wanted all that stuff. So when I tell teachers this, look, use your students. When it got down to the end
Mm-hmm.
of the year, I had like those that last week left. You're not
Mm-hmm.
teaching anything brand new. The things that
No.
I do, like those last couple weeks, I teach the stuff that's like fun stuff, like or
Mm-hmm.
stuff that I feel like that we haven't taught, but I think they should know, like how to write a letter. Sometimes like we wouldn't cover that. That
Right.
wouldn't be in the curriculum.
Curriculum.
But they need to
Mm-hmm.
know how to address an envelope. They need to know.
Or to write in
Yes,
cursive.
exactly. So
Right.
during that time, you have a lot of free time. We're putting things away. I'm handing them back stuff, projects we've
Mm-hmm.
done over the school year. And I had this group of young ladies, and it just turned out like that. All the boys wanted to play games, and all the girls were like, "We want to
Mm-hmm.
help you take your stuff off your walls."
Right.
So my girls, they got down, and It was like amazing. They got there and they typed out, I showed them what I want. I said, I want my title in this column because they had their
Mhm.
Chromebooks and I shared it. I shared the Excel sheet with them from my Chromebook to them. And so they had their little Chromebooks over there. And I said, every time you pick up a book, you're going to look it up on Goodreads and find out what
Mhm.
genre it is. Type in there, I had already created the drop down menu, and they got to work in one day. They organized, it was over 100 books, put them in my Excel form by genre. And I was just like, yeah, what y'all want? I had Capri Suns for the boys, like, where they getting them snacks from?
Right.
They were helping me. Y'all said y'all didn't want to help
That's
me.
a great tip. That's a great tip because my all my students always come to school when I was teaching the last day of school. I'm like telling them you're gonna have a packet of work, and they did not care. And then they want to blame it on their parents. My mom told me I couldn't stay at home, so I was like, you know what? I'm about to get you to help me to get ready for next year because you playing right now. I told
Mhm.
you not to come to school. You got to tell them. You got to tell them. You can't just say don't come
Don't
to
come to
school. You got
school.
to tell them in special
Well,
ways.
if
Like
you come to school,
if you come to schools, you're gonna be doing a lot of work. I have a packet already prepared with 300 pages in all subjects, even the one you hate.
also
All subjects, even
stuff
the
I
stuff
haven't
you
even taught,
hate.
all multiplication tables.
And they still come to work. And they come to school smiling at you. You looking at them like, and
Why
they
you?
smiling. What? Why are you here? But you got to work today. But that's a great tip. Put them to
Yeah,
work.
put them to work.
Something
It's
that's gonna help
different.
you. Yeah, it
Yes, and
is.
it's different for them. They're usually
Mhm.
excited about it, you know. And the boys did end up helping me a little bit. They helped with the heavy duty stuff because they want to show that they're
Mhm.
strong.
Right.
Because I will say that one and that only year that I teach fifth grade, knock on wood, all of the girls in my class were taller than all the boys.
Mhm.
And so the boys were always just had this subconscious type of competition with the girls because they always wanted it. But I would always call on one of my girls to get something off the wall because they were tall.
Yeah, because they were taller.
It would be
Everyone has that group where the girls are taller. Then it
yeah.
changes. So yeah.
And it was so funny. Like, Miss Hill, you don't ever ask us to do anything. Well, baby. And I would look at him and I'm like, well, she's a little bit taller. I'm tall too. You're tall for you. I
Right.
need
For
somebody that's
you,
tall for me.
I need somebody tall for me to reach that.
Because I'm already like I'm about 5'7", so like I'm already tall anyway for a woman. But then you
Hmm.
get up there, and I had some students in fifth grade, some girls that were my height,
Hmm. I
and I
had
didn't
years
want.
like that too.
Yes, you don't want them to. I know how it can feel, like kind of feeling awkward, like you're the
Hmm.
tallest girl, and I'm like, girl, you are a model. You better get up there.
Right.
Give me that anchor chart
Use
up.
that height. Right. You better get that anchor chart.
Oh my goodness. So yes, use those students. Okay, so I want to wrap up our conversation. Just give some give us some tips, give parents some tips. So we've been talking to educators about, we've taught some new educators wanting to get some higher ed degrees. And then now I want to talk to parents. Just give a tip to some parents on just maybe how to communicate better with their child's teacher. Because sometimes I think we don't talk to parents enough. Like
Right.
it's
You
always like
don't.
a blame, blame, blame. Can you kind of just give some closing thoughts and talk to our parents out there that might be watching?
Yes. So, parents, I would say you want to build a partnership with the school. Some parents are really great at this. And I know we have parents that are working all types of hours. And so we commend you because we know you're trying to provide for your children. But I would say, in this age of technology, there's so many ways. You have parents that want things sent home in the backpack. We get that.
Mhm.
But everybody has a phone, right? And so those apps that the teachers recommend at the beginning of the year, join those apps, buy them, whatever, get them from your app store and make sure, because that's an easy, quick way for you to always know what's going on with your child, what's going on at their school, how can you help. Try to volunteer for different events. Even if you
Mhm.
if you work the night shift, go in the morning, help out in the office or for special events, or maybe it's a breakfast or something that they're doing for that grade or for the school, go in and volunteer. You want your face to be, you want people to know you, but most importantly, you want to work hand in hand with the teacher. Because I had students that once they found out that you've been talking to my mama, and you got my mama number, it changed everything for them. They were like, Miss Harmon got her number, she and my mama getting along and all this, and I can't go home and make up stuff no more because my mama was like, oh, let me check with Miss Harmon and see if you telling me the truth. And so you want to build that relationship with the teacher, and you don't want to bring maybe negative experiences that you had with previous teachers. You don't want to just say all the teachers are like that. Just like I didn't want to hear about things about my students. I wanted to get to know them for myself and
Yeah.
build my own relationship with them. And so you want to do that too. And even if it's not, whatever about the school that you don't like, I think that is the biggest thing. Building partnerships, building relationships, and showing up. Show up for your kids. If you have a question or you think that they should have homework and you're not seeing it or whatever, you need to contact that teacher and find out, because teachers do a great job about sending out ways in which they communicate with them, whether it be an app, whether it be days that you can come in, whatever it may be. And so I would say that's the most important thing, showing up for your kids. They need to see you at that school. It is more important than you know.
Awesome. Well, I just want to again thank you for joining me today. Thank you so much for taking the time out. I know it's Father's Day weekend, and we got to, make sure the men in our lives feel appreciated.
Yes, I'm getting ready to do something now for mine as soon as we finish.
Yes, yes. And and I love how you definitely spoke to how much support your husband gave you through your journey being an educator. And I love to shout out my husband because he has definitely been a rock. He's like one of those, like, he's kind of like this silent watchman kind of, that's his deal.
Right.
And he has been very supportive of me. And even when I kind of felt uncertain about my future as a teacher, like when I said, man, is this for me? And he said, man,
Yeah.
you're natural at this. Like, he really gave, and he's a
Yeah.
coach. So it's like he gave me that.
Yeah. He coached you. He gave you just
Yes,
what you need to get through.
exactly. Exactly. So I'm so glad that Mr. Hallman has been so supportive of you and your journey. Again,
Absolutely.
thank you so much.
You're
And
so welcome.
yes,
It was
thank
a pleasure. I've enjoyed it.
I've enjoyed you as well. So until next time, I will talk to you later.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. All right, y'all. It has been an absolute pleasure diving into the inspiring journey of Precious Morgan Hallman, from her early days in Utah, Alabama, to becoming a trailblazing reading specialist and author. Precious has shown us the transformative power of dedication, innovation, and a deep love for education. So we hope her story has sparked new ideas and motivated you to create a positive change in your own educational spaces. Whether you're an educator, a parent, or simply passionate about learning, remember that you too have the power to make a lasting impact. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review in the comments. Share it with your friends, family, and colleagues who might be also inspired by Precious's journey. Stay tuned for our next episode, which will be next Sunday, where we'll continue to explore the dynamic world of education with another incredible guest. Until then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep spreading pearls of wisdom you gather along the way. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Pearls of Pedagogy. Bye, y'all. Thanks so much.